Hello guys, welcome to Infinite Stories. Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. Let's get into the story. The scorching Abuja sun beat down mercilessly as Naomi maneuvered her old, rickety motorcycle through the congested streets. Sweat dripped down her face, but she had no time to wipe it away. The package strapped to her back was due for delivery, and she was already behind schedule. The heavy traffic wasn't helping either, with honking cars and impatient drivers squeezing into every available space. Naomi's heart pounded with anxiety. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not when it was the only thing keeping her and her ailing mother afloat. Taking a deep breath, she decided to speed up, weaving skillfully between cars. But just as she tried to overtake a slow-moving vehicle, a sudden swerve from another driver sent her off balance. Before she could react, her motorcycle skidded forward and slammed into the side of a luxurious black car with a sickening crunch. Naomi's heart stopped. She stared in horror at the dent her motorcycle had left on the expensive car. The glossy paint was scratched, and the side mirror dangled loosely. "I'm finished," she whispered, her breath shallow. She couldn't even afford to fix a bicycle, let alone a car that looked like it belonged to a billionaire. A sharp click made her flinch as the car door swung open. A tall, impeccably dressed man stepped out, his deep brown eyes locking onto hers. His face was unreadable, but there was something intense about his gaze. Naomi's hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. "Do you have any idea how much this car costs?" His voice was calm, yet commanding. Naomi swallowed hard, her lips dry. "No, sir. Please don't call the police. I was just in a hurry," she stammered. He studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "You have two choices," he said smoothly. "Either you work for me until the damage is paid off, or I have you arrested." Naomi's stomach twisted at his words. Work for him? She barely made enough to survive. How long would it take to repay him? But getting arrested would mean losing everything: her job, her home, her mother's medication. Her lips quivered as she lowered her gaze. "I'll work for you," she whispered. The man's expression softened slightly, but he quickly masked it. "Good. Follow me," he instructed. Naomi hesitated for a second before nodding. She pushed her motorcycle to the side of the road, her fingers shaking as she turned off the ignition. A few passers-by had gathered, whispering among themselves. Embarrassment burned her cheeks as she walked behind the billionaire. He opened his car door, gesturing for her to get in. Naomi froze. "Sir, she started, but he interrupted her. "My name is Joshua," he said. "And if you're going to work for me, you better start getting used to it." The air inside the car smelled like expensive leather and something distinctly masculine. Naomi sat stiffly, afraid to touch anything. Joshua drove in silence, his gaze fixed on the road. Naomi stole glances at him, wondering what kind of man he was. Why wasn't he angrier? Why did he look at her like that? They finally pulled up to a massive glass building, the kind only the wealthiest people in Abuja owned. "This is where you'll be working," Joshua said as he stepped out. Naomi followed, her legs unsteady. As they entered, heads turned in their direction. Workers in crisp suits gawked at her disheveled appearance, and Naomi felt even smaller. Joshua led her to a private office and leaned against the desk. "Starting tomorrow, you'll be my personal assistant," he declared. Naomi's mouth fell open. "Personal assistant?" she echoed. "You expected to mop floors?" he asked, smirking. "You're paying off a luxury car, not a bicycle." The next morning, Naomi stood outside Joshua's office, her nerves on edge. She had spent the night wondering what exactly a personal assistant did. Was she supposed to bring him coffee? Handle paperwork? She had no idea, but she knew one thing: she had to endure this job, no matter what. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door. "Come in," came Joshua's deep voice. Naomi stepped inside, her gaze flickering to the billionaire seated at his desk. He looked effortlessly powerful in his tailored suit, his fingers tapping against the glass surface. "You're late," he said. Naomi stiffened. "But it's just," she glanced at the clock. "I'm 2 minutes early." Joshua smirked. "Exactly. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late." Naomi bit back a groan. Was he serious? Her first task was simple, organizing some files. But as the day progressed, she realized that working for Joshua was far from easy. He was demanding, precise, and had no patience for mistakes. Every time she fumbled, his sharp gaze bored into her, making her feel small. Yet, despite his strictness, he never raised his voice. There was something about the way he watched her that made her uneasy, not in a bad way, but in a way that made her heart race. It confused her. Why did he look at her like that? As she stacked the last file, Joshua suddenly asked, "Why were you in such a hurry yesterday?" Naomi blinked, caught off guard. "I had a delivery," she answered. "My mother is sick, and I needed the money." His expression flickered with something she couldn't read. "I see," he murmured. And for the first time, Naomi thought she saw a crack in his tough exterior. Days turned into weeks, and Naomi slowly adjusted to her new role. She learned Joshua's schedule, his habits, even his moods. He was a perfectionist, and she had to keep up. Yet, despite his intimidating presence, Naomi found herself drawn to him. He was intelligent, quick-witted, and had a surprising sense of humor when he let his guard down. And then there was the way he looked at her. She tried to ignore it, but every time their eyes met, she felt a spark she couldn't explain. She reminded herself that he was a billionaire, and she was just a girl repaying a debt. Nothing more. But fate had other plans. One evening, Naomi was finishing up some work when Joshua called her into his office. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. She hesitated before obeying. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You're different," he said finally. "You don't treat me like everyone else." Naomi frowned. "Because I dented your car?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "No. Because you don't care about my money." Naomi swallowed. "I care about my job," she corrected. "And my mother." Joshua leaned forward. "That's exactly why I can't stop thinking about you." Naomi's breath caught. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Sir," she started, but he cut her off. "Call me Joshua," he murmured. And in that moment, Naomi knew, her life was about to change forever. Naomi sat frozen in her chair, unsure of how to respond. Joshua's words had caught her completely off guard. "You can't be serious," she whispered, still in disbelief. His gaze remained steady, unwavering. "I am," he said simply. For a long moment, Naomi couldn't speak. Her mind raced. This was the billionaire she had accidentally dented his car, and now he was confessing something far deeper than just an apology. "You're a good person, Naomi," he continued. "That's what I admire about you." Naomi's heart raced in her chest. Thank you, but I don't think I'm the person you think I am." Joshua smiled slightly, the hint of something tender in his eyes. "I think I know exactly who you are." Naomi was left speechless, unsure whether she wanted to believe him or not. The days following their conversation were charged with an electric tension neither could ignore. Joshua continued to be kind yet distant, maintaining his usual cool demeanor. Naomi, on the other hand, was torn. She couldn't shake the image of him looking at her like that, like she meant something more than just a hired hand. The reality of her situation weighed heavily on her. Her mother's medical bills continued to mount, and despite the luxury she was surrounded by, Naomi's life outside these walls was far from a fairy tale. Still, every time Joshua looked at her, a small part of her hoped there could be something more. But that hope felt impossible. He was a billionaire, and she was just a girl with a dented motorcycle and a sick mother. They existed in different worlds. As the weeks passed, Naomi grew more accustomed to Joshua's world. The mansion, the servants, the luxury, it was overwhelming at times, but she was learning. Yet, no matter how comfortable she became in her new role, the strange pull she felt towards Joshua never faded. It was like an invisible thread connecting them, something unspoken but understood between the two of them. One afternoon, she found herself organizing some paperwork when Joshua suddenly walked into the room, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You look deep in thought," he said casually, his voice warm. Naomi stood up quickly, fumbling with the papers. "Just finishing up," she stammered. Joshua's smile grew. "Good. Take the rest of the afternoon off," he offered. Naomi blinked, surprised by the gesture. "But sir, I still have work, Naomi," he interrupted gently. "You've been working hard. Take a break." Reluctantly, Naomi agreed. She had never been one to take breaks, but the idea of leaving the office felt oddly freeing. As she stepped out of the building and into the hot Abuja air, she tried to clear her mind. But instead of enjoying the afternoon off, her thoughts kept drifting back to Joshua. She had no idea why, but a part of her started to wonder, was he being kind just because he had to? Or was there something more behind his actions? The uncertainty gnawed at her, making her anxious, yet hopeful at the same time. She couldn't ignore the feelings building inside her, but she knew that this wasn't something she could easily navigate, especially when there were so many things standing between them. Naomi's internal battle continued, growing more intense with each passing day. Joshua had become a constant presence in her life, not just as a boss, but as someone she could talk to in a way that felt different. The way he treated her was unlike anyone else. There was no condescension, no superiority. He listened when she spoke, asked questions about her life, and remembered the small details. Naomi, in return, started to open up to him more, sharing things about her mother's condition and the difficulties she faced just to make ends meet. One evening, after a long day, Joshua invited her to join him for dinner at his home. Naomi hesitated but agreed, knowing it would be rude to refuse. The evening was casual, just the two of them in a beautiful dining room, and Naomi found herself laughing for the first time in weeks. Joshua's presence was comforting, and the food, though exquisite, seemed secondary to the ease of their conversation. Later that evening, as they finished their meal, Joshua's tone turned serious. "Naomi, I've been thinking a lot about you," he admitted, his eyes locking with hers. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. "You don't have to," she began, but he cut her off gently. "No, I do. I want you to know that you matter. Not just as my assistant, but as a person." Naomi's breath caught. She didn't know how to respond, but for the first time, she felt seen, really seen. Not because of the accident, not because of the debt, but because Joshua truly saw her for who she was. She could feel her walls crumbling, the part of her that feared this was all a dream. Over the next few days, Naomi found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Joshua's kindness, his attentiveness, and the subtle changes in the way he interacted with her left her more confused than ever. She couldn't deny the chemistry that had been building between them, but she also feared that she was reading too much into it. It was easy to fantasize about something more when you were living in a world you didn't belong to. She had always been practical, grounded in reality. But Joshua was making it hard for her to keep her feet on the ground. One evening, as they were walking out of the office together, Joshua stopped her outside, his face serious. "Naomi, I need to tell you something," he said softly. Naomi looked at him, her heart racing. "What is it?" Joshua exhaled, his hands running through his hair. "I've been thinking about us. And what this could be," he started, his voice low. "I know we come from different worlds, but I want you to know that I'm not just doing this because you owe me. I care about you." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. "Joshua, please don't, no, "Let me finish," he interrupted. "I don't know what this is, but I'm willing to figure it out. You don't have to feel obligated because of the accident." Naomi shook her head, her heart beating faster. "I never did," she whispered. Before she could finish, Joshua took a step closer, his hands gently brushing against hers. The air between them thickened, and for the first time, Naomi realized she wasn't the only one feeling something undeniable. The days following Joshua's confession were a blur. Naomi felt like she was living in two different worlds, one where she was just a girl trying to survive, and another where she was caught up in something she couldn't fully understand. Every glance from Joshua made her pulse race. Every conversation seemed to linger longer than necessary. She had never imagined this life for herself, never considered that someone like him would even notice her, let alone care about her. But here they were, two people from entirely different backgrounds, drawn to each other in a way neither could explain. One afternoon, Naomi found herself sitting in the office alone, organizing papers when Joshua entered. "Naomi, I've been thinking," he began, his tone serious. "About us." Naomi looked up, her stomach fluttering. "I think I want to take this further," he said quietly. Naomi's heart pounded in her chest. "But, Joshua, this is crazy," she replied, trying to hold on to some semblance of reason. "We're from different worlds." Joshua took a deep breath, stepping closer to her. "I don't care about that," he said firmly. "What I care about is you. I've never felt this way before. I want to be with you, Naomi. I'm not asking you to change who you are. Just to trust me." Naomi's mind raced. It felt too fast, too sudden, but the sincerity in Joshua's eyes made it hard to walk away. I don't know," she murmured, her voice shaking. Joshua smiled softly, his hand reaching for hers. "You don't have to know right now," he said gently. "But I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." Naomi's feelings for Joshua only deepened, but so did her inner turmoil. She couldn't help but feel like she was living a life that wasn't her own. Everything about her situation screamed impossibility. How could she, a girl from the streets, be in a relationship with someone like Joshua? She spent countless nights lying awake, her mind racing with doubt. But with every passing day, she couldn't ignore the fact that Joshua had become a constant presence in her life, a source of comfort and affection she never expected. One evening, as they sat together at a charity gala Joshua had invited her to, Naomi watched him interact with the other guests. He was charming, confident, and everyone seemed to adore him. But as his eyes found hers across the room, he smiled, and Naomi's heart skipped a beat. She realized then that despite all the doubts, despite the fear of what could go wrong, she was falling for him. As the night wore on, Naomi found herself standing alone on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. Joshua joined her moments later, his presence calming. "You look lost in thought," he said, his voice soft. Naomi turned to him, her heart racing. "I am," she confessed. "I don't know what to do about us." Joshua stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "We don't have to know everything right now," he said gently. "But I know this, whatever happens, I want to explore this with you." Naomi met his gaze, her heart full of uncertainty and hope. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was ready to take a chance. "I want to too," she whispered. And as their hands met in the quiet night, Naomi knew that no matter where this journey led, they would face it together. Naomi's unease grew as she spent more time with Joshua. Despite his affection, she struggled with the vast difference in their worlds. Joshua, noticing her discomfort, reassured her, "I don't care about your past, just about you." His words touched her, yet she remained unsure, questioning if their love was real or simply his way of keeping her close. Over the next few days, Naomi found herself grappling with her emotions. She wasn't used to luxury and had always been independent. But Joshua's kindness, His gentle approach to her fears made it hard not to fall deeper for him. The more time they spent together, the stronger their bond grew, and Naomi realized that she was no longer afraid of her feelings, she was in love. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Joshua turned to Naomi and said, "You're different from anyone I've met. I want to spend my life with you." Naomi's heart raced. The billionaire who had once been her nightmare was now her dream. But doubt still lingered. Was this love, or was it a luxury she couldn't afford? Naomi hesitated before answering. She had been through so much in her life, and she wasn't sure she deserved this kind of happiness. However, looking into Joshua's eyes, she saw the sincerity in his words. Slowly, she nodded, allowing herself to believe in the possibility of a future with him. Joshua took her hand, his grip strong, and promised, "We'll build a life together, no matter what." Naomi felt a surge of hope, realizing that maybe, just maybe, this was the love she had been waiting for. As the weeks passed, Naomi found herself adjusting to her new life. Though it was vastly different from her humble beginnings, she began to appreciate the love and security Joshua offered. One morning, Joshua surprised her with a trip to a beautiful resort outside of Abuja, hoping to give her a chance to relax. Naomi, however, couldn't shake the guilt that had been growing inside her. During their getaway, Naomi confided in Joshua about her fears, how she felt like she didn't belong in his world. Joshua listened intently, his expression soft. "You belong with me," he said, "because I chose you, Naomi. Not the life you had, not the mistakes you've made. Just you." His words made Naomi's heart swell, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still somehow unworthy of this life he was offering her. Naomi continued to battle her insecurities, but Joshua was relentless in his efforts to reassure her. He planned dinners, outings, and heartfelt surprises, each one making Naomi feel like she was the only one who mattered. However, a part of her still felt trapped by the glamour of it all, unsure whether she was ready to leave behind her old life. One night, as they walked along the beach, Naomi opened up about her fears. Joshua stopped, cupping her face in his hands. "I don't care about the past, Naomi," he said softly. "What matters is the future. And I want you in mine." Naomi, touched by his words, felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could create a life together, no matter where they came from. Naomi began to realize that her life was changing in ways she hadn't expected. With Joshua by her side, she had access to opportunities and experiences that seemed like dreams come true. But despite the wealth and luxury, Naomi's heart was still grounded in her roots. She spent more time with her mother, who was getting better, and realized how much she had missed the simplicity of her old life. Joshua noticed her emotional distance and, one evening, asked her what was on her mind. Naomi hesitated before saying, "I don't want to forget where I came from." Joshua smiled softly, his understanding evident. "I don't want you to forget," he replied. "I just want you to remember that you're not alone in this anymore." His words comforted her, reminding her that their love could be a bridge between her past and their future. Naomi's relationship with Joshua deepened, and so did her sense of belonging. She had started to embrace her new life, learning to balance the extravagant world Joshua inhabited with the grounded, humble life she once knew. But there was still one hurdle she hadn't overcome, her fear of being seen as nothing more than a convenience to him. One afternoon, as they sat together in his office, Naomi asked Joshua about his past relationships, wondering if he had ever fallen in love like this before. Joshua, without hesitation, confessed that he had never felt this way about anyone. "Naomi," he said, "you're not a convenience. You're the woman I want to spend my life with. And I'll spend every day proving that to you." Naomi felt a rush of emotions, relief, love, and a deeper understanding of the man she had come to love. As the days turned into weeks, Naomi and Joshua's bond grew stronger. Joshua, ever the protector, made sure Naomi felt safe and cherished. Yet, Naomi was still hesitant to let go of her old life completely. She began working on projects that gave her a sense of independence and purpose. It was a delicate balance between her new life with Joshua and the independence she craved. One evening, after a long day, Naomi surprised Joshua by preparing a simple dinner at his house. He was touched by the gesture, and as they ate, Naomi explained, "I need to remember who I am, even in this new life. I'm not just someone's girlfriend or a luxury you can buy." Joshua, understanding the importance of her independence, smiled and said, "You're everything I could ever ask for, Naomi. Don't ever forget that." His words comforted her, reaffirming the love they had built together. Naomi's relationship with Joshua was progressing in ways she never imagined. Yet, deep inside, a small part of her remained uncertain. One day, while out with friends, she overheard a conversation about Joshua and his past, leading to a feeling of insecurity. She began to wonder if she was just one of many women in his life. When she returned home, she confronted Joshua, her voice shaking. "Are you in love with me, or is this just a phase for you?" Joshua looked at her, his expression softening. "Naomi, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, and I will prove it to you every day." Naomi felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She realized, in that moment, that the only thing that mattered was their love, and nothing else. As Naomi settled more into her life with Joshua, she began to see a future with him, one filled with love, success, and mutual respect. She knew their journey would not always be easy, but with Joshua by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came their way. One evening, as they walked through the city, Joshua turned to her and said, "You've changed my life, Naomi. You're the best part of me." Naomi smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. She had found something more valuable than wealth. She had found love, and with that love, she knew she could face anything. Joshua took her hand and, without a word, led her toward the future they would build together, hand in hand. Joshua's love for Naomi was evident in every gesture, every word. He was committed to making her feel like she was his equal, not just a symbol of his success. Naomi, in turn, had learned to trust in him fully. One evening, under the stars, Joshua proposed to Naomi, asking her to spend the rest of her life with him. Naomi, overwhelmed with emotion, said yes. The love they shared had transcended the differences between their worlds, and together, they would create a future filled with love and happiness. Naomi realized that her journey had only just begun, but with Joshua by her side, she was ready for anything the future had in store. Naomi's life with Joshua became a whirlwind of new experiences. As they settled into their engagement, Naomi couldn't help but reflect on how much she had changed since meeting him. The woman who had once been consumed by doubt was now preparing to marry a man who truly loved her. One afternoon, as they planned their wedding, Naomi felt a moment of clarity. She had found her place in Joshua's world, but more importantly, she had found her own strength. Joshua noticed the calm that had settled over Naomi. He admired her resilience and the way she had embraced his life while remaining true to herself. "I love how you've handled everything, Naomi. You're stronger than you know," he said, his voice filled with pride. Naomi smiled, grateful for his unwavering support. She realized that their love wasn't just about blending their worlds, it was about growing together, learning from each other, and building a life that was truly theirs. The months leading up to the wedding were filled with excitement and anticipation. Naomi found herself becoming more involved in the planning, not just as Joshua's fiancée, but as an equal partner in their future. She took charge of certain details, surprising even herself with how organized and capable she was. The more she contributed, the more confident she felt in her ability to build her own future alongside Joshua. One evening, as they sat together, Joshua leaned in and whispered, "You're perfect just the way you are, Naomi. I don't need anything to change." Naomi looked at him, her heart swelling. She had found a man who saw her for who she truly was, and it was a feeling she couldn't put into words. Their love wasn't built on appearances or expectations, it was real, raw, and beautiful. As the wedding day drew closer, Naomi realized that this new chapter was just the beginning of their incredible journey. The wedding day arrived, and Naomi found herself surrounded by loved ones, her heart full of emotion. As she stood in front of Joshua, her fiancé, she realized just how far they had come. What started as an accident had turned into a love story that no one, including herself, could have predicted. Naomi had never imagined that a simple mistake would lead her to this moment, but here she was, ready to say I do to the man who had changed her life. Joshua, standing at the altar, couldn't take his eyes off Naomi. She was everything he had ever wanted and more. When the vows were exchanged, Joshua's voice shook slightly as he promised to love and cherish Naomi for the rest of his life. Naomi, her voice strong yet filled with emotion, promised to support him, no matter where life took them. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Naomi realized that, in this moment, they had created their forever. Life after the wedding was everything Naomi had hoped for. She and Joshua spent their days traveling, exploring new places, and building their lives together. Naomi was no longer just the delivery girl from Abuja. She was the woman who had captured the heart of a billionaire. But as their love story continued to unfold, Naomi realized that true happiness wasn't found in luxury, it was in the small moments they shared. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Naomi looked at Joshua with gratitude in her eyes. "I never thought I would be here, Joshua," she said softly. "But now, I can't imagine my life without you." Joshua smiled, pulling her close. "You were always meant to be here," he whispered, "with me." Naomi rested her head on his chest, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Their love was their greatest treasure, and it was something no one could ever take away. As their first year of marriage came to a close, Naomi and Joshua began to discuss starting a family. Naomi had always dreamed of having children, but the idea of balancing motherhood with her growing career seemed daunting. Joshua, ever supportive, assured her that they would figure it out together. "We'll build a life that works for both of us," he said, "just like we've always done." Naomi felt a renewed sense of purpose. The love she shared with Joshua wasn't just about the two of them, it was about creating something beautiful together. Whether it was their business ventures or the family they dreamed of, Naomi knew they could tackle anything as a team. And so, with a heart full of love, Naomi looked forward to the next chapter of their journey, ready to face whatever life had in store for them. The news of Naomi's pregnancy brought immense joy to both her and Joshua. As she adjusted to the changes in her body and life, Naomi found herself reflecting on her journey from the delivery girl who accidentally hit Joshua's car to becoming the mother of his child. The thought filled her with both awe and gratitude. Despite the challenges ahead, Naomi was excited to take on this new role and embrace the changes that came with it. Joshua was by her side every step of the way, ensuring that Naomi felt loved and supported. He attended doctor's appointments, took on more responsibilities at home, and constantly reassured Naomi that they were in this together. As they prepared for the arrival of their baby, Naomi realized that their love had created the perfect foundation for their growing family. It was no longer just about them, it was about the future they were building together. As Naomi's pregnancy progressed, she began to experience moments of doubt. Was she ready for motherhood? Could she truly balance her career, her role as a wife, and now as a mother? Joshua, sensing her anxiety, took her aside one evening and told her, "You've always been strong, Naomi. You've faced everything that's come your way, and you'll handle this too." His words calmed her fears. Naomi knew that motherhood would be challenging, but she also knew she had a partner who would always stand by her side. Together, they would navigate the ups and downs of parenting. As the days passed, Naomi embraced her new role, knowing that the love they shared would guide them through this next chapter of their lives. The day Naomi gave birth to their daughter was one of the happiest days of their lives. Holding their newborn in her arms, Naomi couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of love and responsibility. She looked at Joshua, who was equally in awe of their baby girl. "We did this, Naomi whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Joshua kissed her forehead, his love for her deeper than ever. "We're going to be amazing parents," he said, holding their daughter close. Naomi felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. In that moment, everything she had once doubted, her worth, her abilities, seemed to fade away. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and with Joshua by her side, she knew they could conquer anything. As they adjusted to life with their new baby, Naomi and Joshua's love only deepened. The sleepless nights and the challenges of parenthood didn't faze them. In fact, they brought them closer together. Naomi had found a new sense of purpose in being a mother, and she felt a renewed appreciation for her journey. She had come so far, from delivering goods on her motorcycle to becoming the mother of a beautiful child. One evening, as they sat together in the nursery, Naomi looked at Joshua and said, "I never imagined life could be like this, but now I can't imagine it any other way." Joshua smiled, his eyes filled with love. "This is just the beginning, Naomi," he replied. "Our family is just getting started, and there's so much more ahead for us." Years passed, and Naomi and Joshua's family continued to grow. Their love remained as strong as ever, built on a foundation of trust, respect, and unwavering support. Naomi had flourished in her new role as both a mother and a businesswoman, balancing her responsibilities with grace. And Joshua, ever the loving husband, had been her rock through it all. As they sat together, watching their children play in the yard, Naomi realized that the journey she had started all those years ago, the one that began with a simple accident, had led her to a life she had never imagined. A life filled with love, family, and the happiness she had always dreamed of. And in that moment, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. That's the end of the story. What did you learn about the story? Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.